We're going to begin in verse 19. Therefore, brethren, since we have confidence to enter the holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way, which he inaugurated for us through the veil, that is his flesh. And since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a sincere heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience, our bodies washed with pure water. What's going on in this passage? Every passage in the Bible, every passage that's ever been written, as a matter of fact, has a context. And if you know the context, you can understand what the author was trying to say. This is a letter written by possibly Paul, we're not really sure, but one of the apostles wrote it, and it was written to Jewish believers. And this was only when the church was maybe a few decades old. So a lot of people that were saved in the early church, maybe even on the day of Pentecost, were people who had been raised in Judaism. And they had been raised to understand that when you sin, you take an animal to the priest, and the priest will sacrifice that animal and sprinkle the blood around, and that is a temporary pass. You get a temporary forgiveness for that sin. And they were pretty much obligated over and over to do those sacrifices because you sin again. You probably sin on your way home from the temple. So that was not a good system. But that Jews were very dependent upon that system. They felt horrible when they sinned. They felt that God was angry at them, and that's what motivated them to bring the animal in for sacrifice. So when we're talking about sprinkling, that's a part of the sacrificial system. When we're talking about washing with pure water, that's a part of the sacrificial system. So the author is making an analogy. Let's read that again. Therefore, brethren, since we have confidence to enter the holy place by the blood of Jesus, that's not the blood of animals, it's a much better sacrifice, Jesus, the Son of God, by a new and living way which he inaugurated for us through the veil, that is his flesh. So there used to be a veil in the temple that separated off the Holy of Holies, the holiest place of all, where no one could go because it was just too holy, except the high priest with the proper rituals one day a year to bring the blood and sprinkle it on the mercy seat. And it was a big deal. But now we can draw near with a sincere heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience. Back in the day when our conscience was evil, before Christ, the Jewish person would take the sacrifice. Now their hearts are clean. They've been sprinkled clean, figuratively. The animal ritual is kind of like a picture of what happens when Jesus died. We get forgiveness. Kind of like when the animal dies, the blood is sprinkled on the altar. Jesus' blood is figuratively sprinkled on our hearts. So we don't have to worry about those animal sacrifices anymore. And our bodies washed with pure water. The instruments of the sacrifice had to be, in the priest's hands, had to be washed with holy water at the temple. So the imagery is to comfort the Jew who feels guilty when they sin and their conscience is pricked.